Hello, everyone. My name's Mike. I never thought I'd end up here, typing out my life story to strangers on the internet. But hey, life has a funny way of throwing you curveballs, doesn't it? Let me start from the top. I've been married to Lisa for 5 years. On the surface, our life looked pretty great. We had a cozy little house in Denver, 2 dogs named Max and Bella, and plans to start a family soon. Lisa was the type of person who could walk into a room and charm anyone, sharp, confident, and yeah, maybe a little too comfortable in the spotlight. Meanwhile, I was the quieter type, more content with staying behind the scenes, supporting her dreams while I worked my steady 9 to 5. But lately, something had changed. It started small, as these things often do. Lisa would come home late from work, her explanations vague. Oh, another meeting ran long. Or, we had a last-minute client dinner. At first, I didn't think much of it. Lisa worked in marketing, and her boss, Todd, was known to be a demanding, type A perfectionist. But then there were the phone calls. One evening, while we were watching TV, Lisa's phone buzzed on the coffee table. She grabbed it quickly, glancing at the screen before flipping it face down. I caught a glimpse of the contact, Todd, with a smiling emoji. I didn't think too much of it until it became a pattern. Her phone was practically glued to her hand, and she'd excuse herself to take calls in the other room. I'll admit, I started feeling uneasy. You know that gut feeling, the one that's impossible to ignore? Yeah, that one. But I told myself I was being paranoid. Lisa had never given me a reason not to trust her. Until the dinner party. Lisa and I had been invited to a work event at her company. It was a fancy affair, the kind where everyone wears suits and sips champagne like it's water. Lisa introduced me to her coworkers, and that's when I met Todd. He was everything I expected, tall, polished, and radiating that alpha male energy. He shook my hand a little too firmly and made a point of calling Lisa the most brilliant mind on his team. Normally, I'd have taken that as a compliment, but the way he looked at her, it wasn't admiration. It was something else. The rest of the evening was off. Lisa stayed close to Todd, laughing at his jokes and touching his arm just a little too often. Meanwhile, I floated around the room, nursing my drink and trying not to let my imagination run wild. But when I saw them standing off to the side, deep in conversation, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was going on. That night, I confronted Lisa about Todd. Nothing major. Just a casual question while we were getting ready for bed. So, Todd seems like a character, I said, trying to keep my tone light. You two seem pretty close. Lisa didn't miss a beat. Of course we are. He's my boss. I spend more time with him than anyone else. Why? No reason, I said, forcing a smile. But in my head, the doubts were already starting to form. Looking back, that was the night everything changed. I didn't know it then, but I was standing at the edge of a cliff, about to dive headfirst into a mess I never saw coming. And trust me, it only got worse from there. Lisa and I weren't always like this. Back when we met, we were the textbook definition of a power couple, or at least, that's what we liked to think. I was the dependable one, steady and grounded, with a job and IT that I genuinely enjoyed. Lisa, on the other hand, was a wildfire of ambition and charisma. She could talk her way into anything and make it seem like she belonged there. It's one of the things I loved about her, back then, anyway. When Lisa landed her job at the marketing firm, she was over the moon. I was proud too, this was her dream, after all. But then Todd came into the picture. Let me tell you about Todd. Todd wasn't just a boss, he was the boss. The kind of guy who makes an impression the second he steps into a room. He wasn't intimidating because of his looks, although he had the square-jawed, perfectly groomed appearance of a guy who probably had a personal stylist. No, Todd's power came from the way he carried himself. He didn't ask for respect, he commanded it. The stories Lisa told about him in the early days painted a picture of a man who was both brilliant and brutal. Todd's got this way of commanding the room, she'd said after her first major team meeting. Everyone shuts up when he speaks. It's like he knows he's always the smartest guy there. But there was more to Todd than his intellect. According to Lisa, he had a temper, one he didn't bother hiding. She once mentioned how he slammed his hand down on a conference table during a heated meeting, leaving the entire room dead silent. "I swear," she said, half in awe and half nervous, "you could feel the whole building shake when he did it." At first, I didn't think much of Todd's commanding nature. But as Lisa's admiration for him grew, so did my unease. One night she came home late, again. When I asked how her day went, she launched into a story about how Todd had saved a floundering project by tearing into the client during a call. "He doesn't sugarcoat things," she said, almost smiling. "It's refreshing." I raised an eyebrow. "Sounds more like bullying than leadership." Lisa frowned, brushing me off. "You don't get it, Mike. Sometimes people need a push to perform at their best. He's not afraid to give that push." I let it go, but something about the way she spoke, admiring, almost reverent, stuck with me. The turning point came a few weeks later. Lisa and I were at a family barbecue, surrounded by our usual circle of friends and relatives. It was one of those perfect summer evenings, warm air, burgers on the grill, kids running around in the yard. But Lisa was glued to her phone, texting furiously with what I could only assume was Todd. "Lisa," I said, trying to keep my tone light, "can we maybe take a break from work for one night?" She sighed, rolling her eyes. "It's important, Mike. You wouldn't understand." "That's dumb." "Wouldn't understand?" I shot back. "Because I don't work for some guy who throws tantrums in meetings?" Her head snapped up, and for the first time, I saw a flash of something in her eyes, anger, maybe, or defensiveness. "Todd's not like that," she said sharply. "He gets results. If you worked with someone like him, you'd see what I mean." "Yeah, I bet," I muttered, taking a swig of my drink to keep from saying anything worse. The rest of the night passed in awkward silence between us, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting. Lisa had always been driven, but now it was like she was in orbit around Todd, and I was stuck on the ground, watching her drift further away. A few days later, Lisa came home visibly upset. "You won't believe what happened today," she said, dropping her bag by the door. "Todd lost it on one of the interns. Like, really lost it." I paused, unsure how to respond. "Lost it how?" She hesitated, clearly torn between loyalty to her boss and her own shock. "The kid messed up a report, nothing major, but Todd went ballistic. He slammed his hand on the desk so hard, the intern flinched. I think he actually made the poor guy cry." "That's not leadership," I said bluntly. "That's being a bully." Lisa shook her head. "You don't get it. Todd's under a lot of pressure. The clients expect perfection, and he has to deliver. He didn't mean to scare the kid. It just happened." "Right," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Because grown men accidentally scare interns all the time." She glared at me, crossing her arms. "You wouldn't last a day in my world, Mike. Not with the pressure we're under." I stared at her, stunned by how quickly she jumped to his defense. It wasn't just admiration anymore, it was something deeper. That was when I realized Todd wasn't just Lisa's boss. He was becoming something else entirely, a gravitational force pulling her away from me. And I wasn't sure how much longer I could hold on. It was a Thursday evening, and the tension in our house could have been cut with a butter knife. Lisa was holed up in her office again, typing furiously on her laptop while ignoring my attempts to make small talk. I sat in the living room, flipping through TV channels, trying to pretend everything was fine. That's when the doorbell rang. Lisa poked her head out of her office. "Are you expecting someone?" I shook my head. "No. Maybe it's a delivery." I opened the door, expecting to find an Amazon package or a neighbor. Instead, I was face to face with a man who looked like he just stepped out of a war zone. His suit was rumpled, his tie loose, and his face, well, he looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Mike, right?" he asked, his voice rough and hurried. I frowned. "Yeah. Who's asking?" He glanced over my shoulder, clearly nervous. "I'm Alex. I work with Lisa." Can I come in? We need to talk. I hesitated, glancing back at Lisa, who had appeared at the edge of the hallway. Her face went pale the second she saw him. Alex? She said, her voice a mix of confusion and something else. Fear, maybe? Alex ignored her and stepped inside, brushing past me. We don't have much time. Todd's losing it. I mean really losing it. Alex, stop, Lisa snapped, her voice sharp. But Alex wasn't stopping. He turned to me, his eyes wild. Mike, you need to listen to me. Todd isn't who you think he is. This guy, he's dangerous. Dangerous? The word hung in the air like a bad smell. What are you talking about? I asked, glancing between Alex and Lisa. Alex pulled out his phone, scrolling quickly before shoving it in my face. This. Look at this. I leaned in and saw a string of messages, texts from Todd to Lisa. They weren't flirtatious or inappropriate, they were threatening. You think you can just walk away from this? I made you who you are. Don't forget that. If you screw this up, there will be consequences. I felt my stomach drop. What the hell is this? I asked, turning to Lisa. She was frozen, her face flushed with panic. Mike, it's not what it looks like, she stammered. Todd, he's just under a lot of stress. He says things he doesn't mean. Alex scoffed. Don't defend him, Lisa. You know what he's capable of. You've seen it. What is he capable of? I demanded, my voice rising. Alex hesitated, looking at Lisa for confirmation. When she didn't say anything, he continued. Todd's been blackmailing people, clients, employees, anyone who gets in his way. He has dirt on everyone, and he's not afraid to use it. Lisa's no exception. My heart pounded as I processed his words. What does he have on you? I asked Lisa, my voice cold. She looked down, avoiding my eyes. It's nothing serious. Just some emails that could be misinterpreted. Misinterpreted? I repeated, incredulous. Lisa, he's threatening you. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want to drag you into this, she snapped, finally meeting my gaze. You don't understand how ruthless he is. If I stand up to him, I could lose my job, my career. Everything I've worked for. Alex stepped forward, his voice urgent. Lisa, this isn't just about your career anymore. Todd's spiraling. He's been making enemies, and it's only a matter of time before someone fights back. You need to get out before it's too late. Lisa glared at him. And what about you, Alex? You're still working for him, aren't you? Alex shook his head. Not anymore. I quit this morning. But before I left, I made sure to grab this. He pulled a USB drive out of his pocket and held it up. It's all here, proof of everything Todd's been doing. If this gets out, he's done. The room went silent. I stared at Lisa, waiting for her to say something, to explain why she hadn't told me any of this sooner. But she just stood there, looking small and vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before. What do we do now? I asked finally, breaking the silence. Alex looked at Lisa, then back at me. We take this to the authorities. Todd's going to come after anyone who stands in his way, but if we act fast, we can stop him. Lisa hesitated, her eyes darting between Alex and me. And what if he finds out? What if he comes after us? Then we fight back, I said firmly, surprising even myself with the conviction in my voice. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of clarity. This wasn't just about Lisa's job or Todd's threats anymore. This was about protecting what was left of our lives, and maybe, just maybe, getting some answers about the person Lisa had become. But as Alex handed me the USB drive, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The days that followed Alex's visit were tense, to put it mildly. Lisa was on edge, jumping every time her phone buzzed, while I tried to act normal, though it was getting harder with each passing hour. The USB drive Alex left was burning a metaphorical hole in my desk drawer. I hadn't opened it yet. Part of me wasn't ready to face whatever it contained. One night, as I was heading to bed, I overheard Lisa on the phone. She was pacing back and forth in her office, her voice sharp and uncharacteristically firm. "No, Todd, you don't get to push me around anymore," she said. "If you try anything, I swear I'll go to HR. Better yet, I'll sue you. I have everything I need to bury you." I froze in the hallway, my ears straining to catch every word. Her tone was fierce, almost intimidating, nothing like the Lisa who'd been defending Todd to me just days ago. There was a long pause, then she added, "Good. Then stay away from me." With that, she hung up, slamming the phone down on her desk. When I stepped into the room, Lisa turned, startled. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Everything okay?" "Fine," she replied curtly, brushing past me. "It's nothing you need to worry about." The next morning, Lisa left for work early. Normally, I'd let it go, but something about last night's call stuck with me. Her words, her tone, it didn't add up. If she really had dirt on Todd, why hadn't she mentioned it to me or Alex? Curiosity got the better of me. Once Lisa was gone, I went into her office. Her desk was meticulously neat, as always, but I knew Lisa well enough to know where she hid things. After a few minutes of searching, I found it, a manila folder tucked away in the back of a drawer. Inside were a few printed emails and some scribbled notes. The emails were vague. They hinted at inappropriate behavior but didn't actually prove anything. There was nothing concrete, nothing that could stand up in court. And then I found it, a draft of a letter, written in Lisa's handwriting, threatening to sue Todd for harassment. The language was strong, almost legalistic, but it was riddled with inconsistencies and hypothetical scenarios. It wasn't a real legal document. It was a bluff. My stomach churned. Lisa hadn't threatened Todd because she had leverage, she'd done it to scare him, to buy herself some time. When Lisa came home that evening, I didn't say anything. I wanted to confront her, to demand an explanation, but something held me back. Maybe it was the look on her face, the weariness in her eyes. Or maybe I wanted to see how far she'd take this lie before the truth caught up to her. Over dinner, I tested the waters. "So, how's work?" Lisa glanced up from her plate, her expression guarded. "It's fine. Busy as always. Did you, talk to Todd today?" Her fork froze midair. "Why do you ask?" "No reason," I said casually, taking a sip of my drink. "Just curious." She hesitated, then shrugged. "Not much. He's been keeping his distance." As the days turned into weeks, Lisa's confidence seemed to grow. She started coming home earlier, laughing more, and even suggesting we go out for dinner, a rarity these days. "You seem lighter," I said one evening as we were watching TV. Lisa smiled, leaning back against the couch. "I guess I finally feel like I have control again. Todd knows better than to mess with me now." I nodded, forcing a smile. "That's good." But inside, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that her bluff was going to backfire. It wasn't until the following week that everything started unraveling. Lisa came home late one night, her face pale and her hands trembling. She didn't say a word as she walked past me and straight into the bedroom. "Lisa," I called, following her. "What's going on?" She sat on the edge of the bed, staring down at her hands. "Todd called my bluff," she said quietly. My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "He hired a lawyer," she whispered. "He's claiming I made false allegations to damage his reputation. He says he's going to sue me for defamation." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her we'd figure it out. But another part of me, the part that had seen the manila folder in her desk, felt cold. "Do you have proof?" I asked carefully. Lisa shook her head, tears pooling in her eyes. "No. I thought he'd back down. I didn't think he'd fight back like this." I clenched my fists, biting back the words I wanted to say. "You lied, Lisa. You lied to him, to me, to everyone." But instead I took a deep breath and said, "We'll figure it out." As I held her that night, feeling her body shake with silent sobs, one thought kept running through my mind: this isn't over. Not by a long shot. The night after Lisa revealed Todd had called her bluff, I sat alone in my office, staring at the USB drive Alex had left me. It was still unopened, sitting there like a time bomb. Every instinct told me to crack it open and see what was inside, but part of me wasn't ready for what I might find. Lisa had lied to Todd, to me, to everyone. I didn't know what to believe anymore, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to. But when Lisa walked past me that evening, her face pale and her eyes rimmed red from crying, I made up my mind. If Todd was threatening her, I needed to know what kind of man we were dealing with. I plugged the drive into my laptop, my heart pounding as the files loaded. Alex wasn't lying. There was a treasure trove of dirt on Todd. Emails, financial records, even photos of him with what looked like bribes in envelopes. But one folder caught my attention. Employee notes. I clicked it open, and my stomach sank. Inside were files on various employees, including Lisa. Todd had been tracking them all, personal details, financial issues, even private conversations. Lisa's file was extensive, filled with emails she'd sent to Todd over the years. Most of them were innocuous, but there were a few that made my blood run cold. One email, dated nearly a year ago, read, "Thank you for the opportunity. I owe so much to your mentorship, and I'll do whatever it takes to prove myself worthy of your trust." Mentorship? Trust? The words felt slimy now, knowing what I did about Todd's behavior. But it was the next file that truly caught me off guard. A recording labeled, "Lisa call March 15th. I clicked play, and Todd's deep, commanding voice filled the room. "Lisa, you know I've got your back, but you've got to step up," he said. "I know," Lisa replied, her voice shaky. "I'm trying, but things are complicated." There was a long pause, and then Todd spoke again, his tone sharper. "Complicated doesn't cut it. If you want to keep your spot, you need to deliver. No more excuses." The recording ended abruptly, but the implication was clear. Todd had been holding something over Lisa for a long time, pressuring her to stay in line. The next day, Lisa came home to find me sitting at the dining table, the USB drive in front of me. "What's that?" she asked cautiously. "Alex's parting gift," I said, leaning back in my chair. "It's got everything, emails, recordings, the works." Her face went pale. You looked at it?" I nodded. "I did. Care to explain why Todd has a file on you? Or why you've been thanking him for his mentorship like he's some kind of saint?" Lisa sank into the chair opposite me, her hands trembling. "It's not what you think, Mike. I was trying to keep my job. Todd, he's manipulative. He makes you feel like you owe him everything, and if you don't play along, he turns on you." "So you played along," I said flatly. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Yes, but not the way you think. It wasn't like that. He's been pressuring me for months, threatening to ruin my career if I didn't comply. I thought I could handle it, but..." "But what?" I pressed. She looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I made a mistake. I trusted him too much. I let him get too close." I wanted to yell, to demand the full truth, but I held back. Lisa was on the edge, and pushing her might make her shut down completely. "We're going to end this," I said finally, my voice firm. "You're not going to fight him alone anymore." She looked at me, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and relief. "How?" "He's untouchable." I leaned forward, my jaw tight. "No one is untouchable. Not even Todd." That night, I made a call to Alex. "We need to talk," I said. "About Todd?" he asked. "Yeah," I replied. "And about how we're going to take him down." The plan to confront Todd was barely off the ground when the first hit landed. It started with a phone call. Lisa was at work, and I was at home, sorting through the chaos of our lives when her number flashed on my screen. "Mike," she said, her voice trembling. "Something's happened. Can you meet me at the coffee shop near my office?" "Now." I grabbed my keys and left without asking questions, my mind racing with possibilities. When I arrived, Lisa was sitting in a corner booth, staring into her untouched latte. Her face was pale, and her hands were clenched tightly around the cup. "What's going on?" I asked, sliding into the seat across from her. She looked up at me, her eyes glassy. "Todd knows." "Knows what?" "That we have the USB drive," she whispered. My stomach dropped. "How?" "I don't know," she said, shaking her head. "But he's already started. He's told the board that I leaked confidential company information. They're investigating me, Mike. He's setting me up." I leaned back in my chair, trying to process her words. Todd had struck first, and he wasn't pulling punches. "What kind of information is he saying you leaked?" "Client accounts, marketing strategies, stuff I didn't even have access to," she said, her voice breaking. "But he's making it look like I did." I clenched my fists under the table. This wasn't just a smear campaign. It was a calculated attack designed to destroy her credibility and isolate her. "Okay," I said, keeping my voice calm. "We can fight this. We've got the USB drive, and we've got Alex." Lisa cut me off. "No, we can't. If I push back, he'll destroy me. He has everyone wrapped around his finger, Mike. The board, the HR department, even the legal team. No one's going to believe me over him." The frustration bubbled up inside me, but I swallowed it down. "What do you want to do, then? Roll over and let him ruin you?" Lisa flinched at my words, and for a moment I regretted my tone. But I couldn't back down now. "We need to go on the offensive," I said. "We have the evidence. If we expose him publicly, he won't be able to keep this quiet." Her eyes widened. "You mean leak the USB drive?" "Yes," I said firmly. "Alex said it has everything we need to bring him down. If we go public, he won't have time to discredit you. He'll be too busy saving himself." Lisa hesitated, her hands shaking as she reached for her cup. "And what if it backfires? What if he finds a way to twist it and make me look worse?" "Then we don't give him the chance," I said. "We strike first, just like he did." That night I called Alex. "You were right," I told him. "Todd's making his move." "Of course he is," Alex replied, his voice bitter. "That's his playbook. Destroy the opposition before they can fight back." "Well, we're done sitting around," I said. "We're going public." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Are you sure about that? Once this gets out, there's no going back. Todd won't just roll over. He'll fight like hell to bury you both." "I'm sure," I said, glancing at Lisa, who was sitting on the couch with her head in her hands. "We don't have a choice." The next day, Alex met me at a diner on the edge of town. He slid into the booth across from me, looking more haggard than the last time I'd seen him. "I've been digging," he said, pulling out a folder. "Todd's not just shady, he's dirty. Real dirty." He laid out documents detailing Todd's connections to shell companies, offshore accounts, and fraudulent business practices. "This stuff is enough to ruin him," Alex said. "But if we're going to use it, we need to do it carefully. If Todd gets even a whiff of this before it goes public, he'll spin it faster than you can blink." I nodded, my mind already racing with possibilities. "So what's the plan?" "We need to hit him where it hurts," Alex said. "His reputation. If we leak this to the right people, the media, the board, even his wife, he'll be too busy trying to save face to come after you and Lisa." It was a bold plan, and one that left no room for error. But as I stared down at the pile of evidence in front of me, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: hope. For the first time, it felt like we might actually have a chance to win this fight. The plan to expose Todd felt solid, but something about it didn't sit right with me. It wasn't the risk, we were already past the point of no return. It was the nagging feeling that there was more to the story, something Lisa wasn't telling me. That night, after Alex left, I sat down with her. She was curled up on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. "We need to talk," I said, sitting across from her. She looked up, her eyes weary. "What now?" I hesitated for a moment, then said, "What's Todd got on you?" And don't tell me it's just emails. I saw the file, Lisa. There's more, isn't there? Her face paled, and she looked away. Mike, it's not that simple. Then make it simple, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I'm risking everything to help you fight this guy. The least you can do is tell me the truth. Lisa was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Early on, Todd offered me a chance to lead a big campaign. It was a huge opportunity, and I wanted it so badly. But there were strings attached. What kind of strings? I asked, my stomach tightening. She hesitated, then said, he asked me to do things I wasn't comfortable with. At first, it was little stuff, like bending the truth in reports or going along with his shady tactics. But then it got worse. He started asking me to meet with certain clients, to smooth things over when deals went south. I stared at her, the pieces clicking into place. You mean cover for him? She nodded. I didn't know how deep it went until I was already in too far. And then he started using it against me, reminding me of the things I'd done, making sure I knew he could ruin me if I didn't play along. I stood up, pacing the room. So, you've been covering for him this whole time? And you didn't think to tell me? I thought I could fix it, she said, her voice cracking. I thought if I just played along for a little longer, I could get out without any fallout. Well, how's that working out for you? I snapped, immediately regretting the words when I saw the look on her face. Do you think I wanted this? She shot back, tears streaming down her cheeks. Do you think I'm proud of what I've done? I was trying to protect us, Mike. Our life, our future. I didn't want to drag you into this mess. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to stay angry, to hold on to the betrayal I felt, but there was something about the way she looked at me, broken, desperate, that softened me. Lisa, I said, sitting back down. I need to know everything. No more half-truths, no more omissions. If we're going to fight this, I need the full picture. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Okay. I'll tell you everything. Over the next hour, Lisa laid it all out, how Todd had manipulated her, how she justified her actions to herself, and how it had all spiraled out of control. It was hard to hear, but it was harder not to feel a flicker of sympathy. Why didn't you just leave? I asked finally. She gave me a sad smile. Because I was afraid. Of losing my career, my reputation, and you. The next day, I called Alex and told him everything Lisa had revealed. He wasn't surprised. Sounds about right, he said. Todd's been pulling this crap for years. He finds ambitious people, builds them up, and then uses them like pawns. Lisa's not the first, and she won't be the last. So what do we do now? I asked. We stick to the plan, Alex said. But we need to be ready for fallout. Todd's going to throw everything he's got at us once this hits. I hung up, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Lisa had made mistakes, big ones, but she wasn't the enemy here. Todd was. And I was going to make sure he paid for every ounce of pain he'd caused. The morning after Lisa's confession, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. The truth was out in the open, or at least most of it, but that didn't mean things were any easier. Lisa was already up, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring blankly out the window. You okay? I asked, even though I knew the answer. She shrugged. What do you think? I wanted to offer some kind of comfort, but before I could speak, her phone buzzed on the table. She flinched, then hesitated before picking it up. The name on the screen made my blood run cold, Todd. Lisa silenced the call, her hands trembling. He's not going to stop, is he? She whispered, her voice barely audible. No, I said, my jaw tightening. But we're not going to let him win. Later that day, I met Alex again. We sat in the same diner, the folder of incriminating evidence between us like some kind of battle plan. We need leverage, I said. Something that'll make Todd back off for good. Alex nodded. I've been thinking about that. There's one angle we haven't explored yet, his wife. Claire? I asked, surprised. Yeah, Alex said. She's an attorney, and from what I've heard, she doesn't take kindly to lies. If she finds out what Todd's been up to, she could be the nail in his coffin. I frowned. How do we even get to her? Alex smirked. Leave that to me. A few days later, Alex called with an update. I set up a meeting with Claire, he said. She thinks we're just going to talk about Todd's behavior at work, but once she sees the evidence, well, let's just say I don't think she'll be defending him anymore. Are you sure about this? I asked. It's risky, Alex admitted. But Todd's only as strong as the people around him. If we take away his support, he'll crumble. Meanwhile, Lisa's situation at work was getting worse. Todd's smear campaign was in full swing. Rumors about her, leaking, sensitive information were spreading like wildfire, and even her closest colleagues were starting to distance themselves. One evening, she came home and slammed her bag on the floor. I can't take this anymore, she said, her voice shaking with rage. What happened? I asked, bracing myself. He's turning everyone against me, she said, pacing the room. People I thought were my friends won't even look me in the eye. And the worst part? He's acting like nothing's wrong, like I'm the crazy one. Her frustration was palpable, and for the first time, I saw a side of Lisa I hadn't seen before, raw, unfiltered anger. We're going to end this, I said, stepping closer to her. But you need to stay strong. Don't let him see you break. The next day, Alex met with Claire. When he called me afterward, his voice was practically buzzing with excitement. She's in, he said. What do you mean in? She didn't know half of what Todd's been doing. I showed her just enough to get her attention, and now she wants to see the rest. And what happens when she does? I asked, still skeptical. Alex laughed darkly. Let's just say Todd's going to have a lot more to worry about than Lisa. That night, Lisa and I sat in the living room, going over our next move. Do you think this will work? She asked, her voice filled with doubt. It has to, I said. Todd's been playing this game for too long. It's time someone turned the tables. Lisa nodded, but the fear in her eyes was unmistakable. Hey, I said, reaching for her hand. We're going to get through this. One way or another. She didn't say anything, but the slight squeeze of her hand told me she wanted to believe that too. The cracks in Todd's armor were starting to show. Now, it was only a matter of time before the entire facade came crashing down. It was a calm morning, the kind where you'd think the world was at peace. But inside, I was anything but calm. The momentum was building against Todd, and while I should have felt relief, a nagging doubt kept gnawing at me. Lisa's confession had been raw and emotional, but something about it didn't add up. She claimed Todd had manipulated her, blackmailed her into covering for him. But was that the whole story? Or was there more she wasn't saying? The nagging questions wouldn't let me rest, so I decided to dig deeper. While Lisa was at work, I booted up my laptop and opened the folder from the USB drive again. Alex had focused on Todd's crimes, financial fraud, manipulation, blackmail. But I wanted to know more about Lisa's involvement. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. In a subfolder titled Internal Communications, I found a string of emails between Todd and Lisa. At first glance, they looked professional, work-related updates, strategy discussions. But as I read further, the tone shifted. One email, sent late at night, read, "You've been incredible on this project, Lisa. I knew I made the right choice putting you in charge. Let's celebrate soon, just the two of us." Her reply, sent the next morning, made my stomach twist. "Thank you, Todd. It means so much to have your trust. I'd love to celebrate sometime soon." I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. The emails didn't explicitly say anything damning, but the undertone was there, familiar, almost flirtatious. I kept digging, my heart pounding as I opened file after file. That's when I found it, a meeting invite sent from Todd to Lisa. The subject line read, "Private follow-up, new campaign strategy." The date was nearly a year ago, around the same time Lisa had mentioned feeling pressured by Todd. I couldn't stop myself. I grabbed my phone and texted Alex. Did you ever find anything about Lisa being directly involved with Todd's shady deals? He replied almost immediately. Nothing concrete. Why? Just something I found. Feels like there's more to this than she's saying. Be careful, Mike. If there's more, it might be something you don't want to know. That evening, Lisa came home visibly shaken. Todd's tactics had escalated again. He pulled me into his office today, she said, dropping her bag on the floor. He said he knows about the USB drive and that if I don't stop, he'll make sure I lose everything. My job, my reputation, even you. I froze. He threatened me? She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Mike. I never wanted you to get dragged into this. The anger I felt was white-hot, but I kept it under control. We need to act fast, I said. Alex and Claire are already moving against him, but we need to be ready for whatever he throws at us next. Lisa nodded, her face pale but determined. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything I'd read, everything Lisa had said. There were still too many unanswered questions. At 2 a.m., I grabbed my laptop and went back to the USB drive. This time, I opened a folder labeled Projects. Inside was a series of reports tied to the campaign Lisa had mentioned, the one she said Todd had pressured her to lead. The reports showed unusual financial activity, payments funneled through shell companies, expenses that didn't add up. Lisa's name was all over them, listed as the project lead. My chest tightened. If Todd went down, there was a chance Lisa would go down with him. The next morning, I confronted Alex again. This campaign Lisa worked on, I said, sliding the reports across the diner table. What do you know about it? He scanned the documents, his expression darkening. This was one of Todd's biggest scams. He used fake vendors to funnel money into personal accounts. It's all there in the records. And Lisa? I pressed. Alex hesitated. If her name's on this, she's in the line of fire. Whether she was complicit or just a scapegoat, Todd will make sure the blame sticks to her. I sat back, feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Lisa had claimed she was a victim, manipulated and blackmailed by Todd. But was that the whole truth? Or had she played a bigger role in this mess than she let on? The worst part? I didn't know if I wanted to find out. The tension in the house was unbearable. Lisa was trying to keep it together, but I could see the cracks forming. Every call from work, every email notification, sent her spiraling further into panic. Meanwhile, I was fighting my own battle, wrestling with the question of whether Lisa was more involved in Todd's schemes than she admitted. Alex and I kept working in the background, building a case that could blow Todd's life to pieces. But with every new piece of evidence we uncovered, my doubts about Lisa grew stronger. One evening, as Lisa sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, I decided to test the waters. Alex thinks we're ready to move on Todd, I said casually. She looked up, her expression tense. What's the plan? We leak the evidence, I said. Expose everything, his scams, his threats, all of it. Alex and Claire are handling the media side. We just need to be ready when it goes live. Lisa hesitated. Do you think it's enough? It'll be enough, I said firmly. But as I watched her fidget with the edge of her sleeve, a thought struck me. Was she worried about Todd retaliating, or about what the evidence might reveal about her? The next day, Alex called with an update. Claire's got the press on board, he said. They're ready to run the story as soon as we give the green light. What about the company? I asked. If Todd gets wind of this before it breaks, he'll find a way to spin it. Alex chuckled darkly. That's the beauty of it. We're not just hitting him in the media. Claire's filing a formal complaint with the board, backed by the evidence from the USB drive. By the time he tries to defend himself, his career will already be in shambles. I couldn't help but feel a flicker of satisfaction. Todd had spent years manipulating and bullying people into submission. Now it was his turn to face the music. That evening, I told Lisa about the plan. We're going public tomorrow, I said. Alex and Claire are ready to drop the hammer. She nodded, but her face was pale. And what happens to me? What do you mean? I asked. Lisa bit her lip. If my name comes up in any of this, will they think I was involved? I hesitated. If you were just following orders, they'll see that. But if there's more to the story. There's not, she said quickly, cutting me off. Her reaction was too sharp, too defensive. But I let it go. The next morning, everything was set in motion. Alex sent the evidence to a major news outlet, while Claire filed her complaint with the board. The first article went live just after noon. Top marketing executive under fire for fraud, blackmail allegations. It was brutal, detailing Todd's financial schemes, his manipulation of employees, and even his connection to offshore accounts. Within hours, the story was everywhere. By late afternoon, Lisa came home in a panic. He knows, she said, slamming the door behind her. Todd knows we're behind this. How? I asked, my heart pounding. He called me, she said, pacing the living room. He said if I don't come clean, he'll drag me down with him. He's already talking to the board, trying to spin it like I was part of his scheme. I stood there, frozen. This was exactly what I'd feared. What did you say? I asked. I told him I wouldn't let him intimidate me, she said, her voice trembling. But Mike, if they believe him. They won't, I said firmly. The evidence is on our side. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it. That night I couldn't sleep. The weight of everything, Lisa's involvement, Todd's threats, the looming fallout, felt suffocating. I sat in my office, staring at the USB drive, wondering if I'd made the right choice by trusting Lisa. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Alex. Alex, it's happening. Todd's wife just filed for divorce. He's scrambling. It was good news, but it didn't ease the knot in my stomach. Because no matter how much damage we dealt to Todd, the question remained, when the dust settled, what would be left of Lisa and me? The morning after Todd's world started crumbling, I expected Lisa to be relieved. Instead, she was more on edge than ever. She barely touched her breakfast, her eyes darting to her phone every few minutes. What's wrong now? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She looked up, her face pale. He's not going down without a fight, Mike. Todd called me this morning. He said he's already meeting with his lawyers, and they're building a case against me. What kind of case? He's claiming I was the mastermind behind everything, the fraud, the blackmail, all of it, she said, her voice trembling. He's saying I used him to climb the corporate ladder. My chest tightened. This was classic Todd, twisting the narrative to save his own skin. Let him try, I said firmly. We have the evidence. The truth is on our side. Is it? Lisa asked, her voice laced with doubt. By midday, Todd's counterattack was in full swing. Articles started popping up online quoting anonymous sources, who painted Lisa as a cunning, manipulative executive who had orchestrated Todd's downfall. I sat at my desk, scrolling through the headlines. Scapegoat or schemer? The truth about Lisa, last name. Executive accused of orchestrating fraudulent campaigns. The worst part? Some of the details in the articles were eerily accurate, things Todd couldn't have known unless he had access to private conversations or files. Lisa burst into the room, her face flushed with anger. He's using my own emails against me, she said, throwing her phone onto the desk. He's twisting my words, making it look like I was complicit in everything. Did he hack your account? I asked. No, she said, her voice shaking. I think he saved copies of every email I ever sent him. He must have been planning this from the start. The situation was spiraling fast. By the end of the day, Lisa's company had placed her on administrative leave pending an investigation. This is exactly what he wanted, she said, pacing the living room. He's making me the villain so he can walk away clean. Well, he's not going to walk away clean, I said, my voice cold. Not if we have anything to say about it. But even as I said it, I could see the fear in Lisa's eyes. She wasn't just worried about losing her job, she was worried about losing everything. The next day, Alex called with an update. Todd's pulling out all the stops, he said. He's using every connection he has to paint Lisa as the real culprit. Can we stop him? I asked. We can slow him down, Alex said. But it's going to get messy. If Lisa has anything in her past that Todd can exploit, now's the time to come clean. I hesitated. What do you mean? Let's just say Todd's good at digging up dirt, Alex said. If there's anything Lisa hasn't told you, he'll find it. That evening, I confronted Lisa. We need to talk, I said, sitting down across from her. She looked up, her expression guarded. About what? About Todd. Alex thinks he's going to dig into your past, looking for anything he can use against you. Lisa's face darkened. I don't have anything to hide. Are you sure about that? I pressed. Her jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought she might snap. But then she sighed, slumping back in her chair. There's nothing he can find that will make me look worse than he already has. The words should have reassured me, but they didn't. There was something about Lisa's tone, defensive, almost evasive, that set off alarm bells in my head. That night, I stayed up late, replaying every conversation we'd had about Todd, every detail Lisa had shared. Was she telling me the whole truth? Or was there still something she was hiding? The next morning, Alex called with more bad news. Todd's lawyers are filing a defamation suit against Lisa, he said. They're claiming she fabricated evidence to ruin his reputation. My grip on the phone tightened. Can they prove it? Probably not, Alex said. But that's not the point. Todd's trying to overwhelm her, make her crack under the pressure. Well, it's not going to work, I said through gritted teeth. It better not, Alex said. Because if Lisa folds, Todd wins. The walls were closing in, and the pressure was suffocating. But I wasn't about to let Todd destroy everything we'd worked for. Not without a fight. The question was, how much more was Lisa hiding, and would it come to light before we took Todd down for good? The pressure in the house had reached a fever pitch. Lisa was unraveling, jumping at every email, every phone call, every notification. Meanwhile, I was barely holding it together myself. Todd's counterattack wasn't just targeting her, it was starting to affect me too. One morning, as I was scrolling through the latest headlines, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Mike, a sharp, confident voice said. It was Todd. For a moment I was too stunned to speak. What do you want? I asked finally. What I've always wanted, he said smoothly. To make sure people know their place. You've been meddling in things you don't understand, and now your little crusade is falling apart. Lisa's career is already over. How long until your marriage follows? My hand clenched into a fist. You think you're untouchable, don't you? He chuckled. I don't think it, Mike. I know it. You're out of your depth. You should have stayed on the sidelines. Before I could respond, the line went dead. That evening I confronted Lisa. Todd called me today, I said, my voice cold. Her head snapped up. What did he say? That I'm out of my depth. That your career is over. That I should have stayed out of it. Lisa's face fell, and for a moment I saw the cracks in her armor. But then she straightened, her eyes narrowing. He's just trying to rattle you. Don't let him get in your head. Is that what he's been doing to you? I shot back. Rattling you? Getting in your head? She didn't answer, and that silence spoke volumes. For the next few days, the tension between us was unbearable. Lisa barely spoke, retreating further into herself, while I tried to make sense of the mess we were in. Then, one night, I made a decision. Lisa was asleep when I grabbed her laptop and opened it on the kitchen table. I didn't feel good about what I was doing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't telling me everything. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for, a folder buried deep in her email drafts, filled with saved messages she'd never sent. The subject lines were innocuous enough. Follow-up, quick question, campaign strategy. but the content was anything but. One draft in particular made my stomach churn. It was dated almost a year ago, around the same time as the campaign Todd had pressured her to lead. Todd, I know this isn't what we agreed on, but I can't keep covering for you. The numbers don't add up, and if this goes public, they'll come after me too. We need to find another way to handle this before it's too late. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. This wasn't just about manipulation or blackmail. Lisa had known about Todd's schemes, and she'd been actively involved. The next morning, I confronted her. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, holding up the printed email. Lisa's face went pale. Where did you get that? Does it matter? I said, my voice rising. You lied to me, Lisa. You said Todd manipulated you, that you were a victim. But this email, this proves you were part of it. You knew what he was doing, and you went along with it. I didn't have a choice, she said, her voice trembling. You don't understand how he operates, Mike. If I hadn't done what he wanted, he would have destroyed me. And now he's doing it anyway. I snapped. So what was the point? What were you even fighting for? Tears streamed down her face. I was fighting for us. For our future. Everything I did to protect what we had. I shook my head, my chest tightening. You don't protect something by lying and covering up crimes, Lisa. You destroy it. For the first time in weeks, I saw the fear in her eyes replaced by something else, desperation. Please, she said, reaching for my hand. I can fix this. We can fix this. But I need you to trust me. I pulled away. Trust? After everything I've found, you want me to trust you? Her silence was deafening. That night I called Alex. It's worse than I thought, I told him. Lisa wasn't just a victim. She was involved. Alex sighed. I figured as much. What do we do now? I asked. We keep going, he said. If Lisa was complicit, it'll come out eventually. But for now, we focus on taking Todd down. He's still the bigger threat. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Let's finish this. As I hung up the phone, I realized the truth. Even if we took Todd down, there might not be anything left to save between Lisa and me. I never imagined I'd reach this point. Even with all the lies, the manipulation, and the chaos Todd had caused, part of me still believed Lisa and I could weather this storm. That if we exposed Todd and put this nightmare behind us, there might be a chance to rebuild. That illusion shattered the night I found the final piece of the puzzle. It started with an argument. Lisa had been distant ever since I confronted her about the email drafts. Every time I tried to bring it up, she deflected, insisting we focus on taking Todd down instead of rehashing the past. But I couldn't let it go. Not when so much still didn't make sense. You're hiding something, Lisa, I said, my voice firm. And I need to know what it is. I've told you everything, she snapped, her eyes flashing with anger. No, you haven't, I shot back. There's more. I can feel it. For a moment, I thought she might break. Her lips trembled, and her gaze darted to the floor. But then she straightened, her expression hardening. This isn't about me, Mike, she said coldly. It's about Todd. If we don't stop him, none of this will matter. Her words left me seething, but I held my tongue. Later that night, as she slept, I went back to her laptop. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for, a folder labeled Personal. Inside were several subfolders, one of which was titled Archive. I opened it, my heart pounding, and there it was, a series of emails and calendar invites between Lisa and Todd. The first few were innocent enough, work updates, project details, the kind of correspondence you'd expect between a boss and his employee. But as I scrolled further, the tone shifted. One email, sent late at night, made my blood run cold. Dinner was incredible tonight. I can't stop thinking about it. You looked amazing in that dress. Lisa's response was worse. Thank you, Todd. I had a wonderful time too. Let's do it again soon. My hands shook as I scrolled through the rest of the thread. There were dozens of messages like it, flirty, intimate, and unmistakably inappropriate. Then I found the calendar invite. Private meeting, Hotel Suite 428. The date on the invite was 6 months ago. I sat there in the dark, the truth hitting me like a freight train. Lisa hadn't just been pressured or manipulated by Todd, she'd been involved with him. An affair. The word felt like acid in my mouth. The next morning, I waited until Lisa was up and moving before confronting her. She was in the kitchen, sipping her coffee, when I laid the printed emails and calendar invite on the table. "What is this?" I asked, my voice calm but ice cold. Lisa froze, her eyes widening as she took in the papers. "Mike, I can explain." "No," I said sharply, cutting her off. "You've been explaining for weeks, Lisa. Now I want the truth." She swallowed hard, her hands trembling as she reached for the papers. "It wasn't what it looks like." "Really?" I snapped, my voice rising. "Because it looks like you were sleeping with your boss while I was at home, trusting you." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't care. "How long?" I demanded. "How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, and in that moment I knew. 6 months, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of betrayal, of living in the shadow of a relationship I didn't even know existed. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why him?" Lisa broke down, tears streaming down her face. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she sobbed. "I was scared, Mike. He had so much power over me, and I felt trapped. I didn't know how to say no." "No?" I repeated bitterly. "You didn't know how to say no to dinner? To hotel meetings? To emails like this?" She shook her head, her face crumpling. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But I swear, it didn't mean anything. It meant enough for you to lie about it for months," I said, my voice hollow. We sat there in silence, the weight of her confession hanging between us like a storm cloud. Finally, I stood, unable to look at her any longer. "I trusted you," I said quietly. "I believed in you. And you threw it all away, for what? A man who used you, manipulated you, and then turned on you the second things got tough?" Lisa sobbed harder, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. "I don't know if I can forgive this," I said, my voice cracking. "I don't even know if I want to." That night, I packed a bag and left. As I drove away, the weight of the betrayal settled deep in my chest. I didn't know where I was going or what the future held, but one thing was certain: the life Lisa and I had built was over. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could finally breathe. The revelation of Lisa's betrayal left me hollow. I spent days in a haze, replaying every moment of our marriage, trying to understand how it had come to this. But no matter how much I dissected the past, one truth remained: Lisa had chosen Todd. And now, it was time for me to make a choice. Alex called me the day after I left Lisa. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I'm fine," I lied. "Sure you are," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Look, I know this is a mess, but we've still got a job to do. Todd's not out of the game yet. He's scrambling, but if we don't finish this, he could wiggle out of everything." "What's the next move?" I asked, my voice flat. "We need Claire to make the next strike," Alex said. "She's the key to taking him down." Claire, Todd's wife, had already filed for divorce after seeing the evidence Alex and I had gathered. But that wasn't enough. If we were going to destroy Todd completely, we needed Claire to take a public stand, to expose him in a way that left no room for doubt. And as it turned out, Claire was more than willing to help. When I met Claire for the first time, it was clear she was nothing like Lisa. She was calm, composed, and utterly ruthless. Her dark hair was pulled back into a sleek ponytail, and her piercing blue eyes gave nothing away. "You're Mike," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "I've heard a lot about you. Hopefully, not all bad," I replied, managing a weak smile. "Mostly bad," she said with a smirk. But I'm starting to see why you've been such a thorn in Todd's side. We sat down at a small cafe, going over the evidence and mapping out our next move. Claire had already spoken to her attorneys, who were preparing to file additional legal actions against Todd for fraud and embezzlement. I want to make him pay, she said, her voice cold. Not just for what he's done to me, but for what he's done to all of us. As we talked, I couldn't help but notice how effortlessly confident she was. Claire wasn't just helping me fight Todd, she was taking control of the battlefield. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had an ally who truly understood the stakes. That night, I found myself thinking about Claire more than I probably should have. There was something magnetic about her, a strength that Lisa had always lacked. And as the days passed, that attraction grew. A week later, Claire invited me to her house to go over the final details of the plan. The moment I walked in, I felt the tension in the air, an unspoken connection that neither of us acknowledged but both of us felt. You've done a lot to bring Todd down, she said as we sat in her living room. You didn't have to, but you did. Why? Because he deserved it, I said simply. For what he did to Lisa, to you, to everyone. Claire nodded, her eyes locking onto mine. You're a good man, Mike. Better than most. The conversation shifted, becoming more personal, more vulnerable. Claire talked about her marriage to Todd, the lies, the manipulation, the years of pretending everything was fine. I shared my own struggles, my heartbreak over Lisa's betrayal. And then, without warning, she leaned in and kissed me. For a moment I froze. But then, something inside me snapped. The anger, the betrayal, the pain, it all melted away, replaced by something primal and raw. I kissed her back, and the world fell away. What happened that night was a blur of passion and revenge. Claire and I both knew it was wrong, but in that moment we didn't care. Todd had taken so much from us, our trust, our happiness, our dignity. And now, we were taking something back. When it was over, we lay there in silence, the weight of what we'd done settling over us like a heavy blanket. This doesn't fix anything, Claire said softly. No, I agreed. But it's a start. The next morning, we were back to business. Claire filed her legal actions, and I handed over the final pieces of evidence to Alex. Todd's empire was crumbling, and now, we had the leverage to finish the job. But as I walked away from Claire's house, I couldn't help but wonder, was this revenge, or was it something more? The morning the final blow landed, everything felt eerily calm. Claire's legal team had filed a devastating lawsuit against Todd, one that detailed every illegal transaction, every act of blackmail, every fraudulent scheme. The media was buzzing with the story, and Todd's face was plastered across every major news outlet. But the real fireworks began when Claire released her personal statement. I can no longer remain silent, her voice declared on the news as I watched from my hotel room. Todd has spent years building his success on the suffering of others, manipulating employees, exploiting clients, and abusing his power. Today, I'm standing up, not just for myself, but for everyone he's hurt. Her statement was accompanied by damning evidence, including some of the files from Alex's USB drive. It was a death knell for Todd's career. By noon, his company announced he'd been placed on indefinite leave pending an investigation. By evening, his name was trending for all the wrong reasons. Lisa called me that afternoon, her voice strained. It's over, she said. They're firing him. He's finished. Good, I said, the word sharp and final. There was a long pause. What about us? She asked softly. I didn't answer right away. The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had finally burned out. I don't know, I said honestly. I don't think there's an us anymore. Her breath hitched. Mike, please. I made mistakes, but I love you. We can fix this. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. You didn't just make mistakes, Lisa. You lied to me. You betrayed me. And you chose him over us. Tears filled her voice. I was scared, Mike. I didn't know what to do. But I'm trying now. I'm trying to make things right. I don't think I can forgive you, I said quietly. When I hung up, a strange sense of relief washed over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could finally breathe. Todd's fall from grace was spectacular. Within days, he was hit with multiple lawsuits, and the board announced they were severing all ties with him. His reputation was in tatters, his marriage destroyed, his career in ruins. Meanwhile, I started to rebuild my life. Claire called me a few days after the dust settled. I owe you, she said. None of this would have happened without you. You don't owe me anything, I replied. We were both fighting the same battle. There was a pause, then she said, Still, thank you. For everything. I could hear the emotion in her voice, and for a moment, I thought about what had happened between us. It had been impulsive, driven by anger and hurt, but it had also been real. What are you going to do now? She asked. Start over, I said simply. Figure out who I am without all of this. Good, she said. You deserve that. The weeks that followed were quiet but healing. I moved out of the house I'd shared with Lisa and into a smaller apartment on the other side of town. I cut ties with most of the people connected to Todd, including Alex, who was busy rebuilding his own life. But I stayed in touch with Claire. One evening, as the sun set over the city, I found myself on her doorstep. I wasn't sure if I should come, I admitted. She smiled, stepping aside to let me in. You're always welcome here. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. As the world moved on, so did I. The scars of Lisa's betrayal would always be there, but they no longer defined me. Todd's reign of terror was over, and for the first time in years, I felt free. In the end, it wasn't revenge that set me free. It was letting go.